Hi, this is Ed Kohler with Extreme Networks. And folks, there's no doubt about it, these are strange and stressful times for all of us. But I want to urge everyone, maintain your activity, maintain productivity. And we have to do that not only for the sake of our societies and economies, but also for our own sanity. Now, we have to realize that communications is really the only way we can do this. And Extreme Networks realizes the critical role that we're playing during this crisis. I do want to add that we've made available certain kits, both for remote teleworkers and also triage breakout. And we've done that in concert, not only with our individual customers, but also for our very, very large healthcare customers, which we're working with concert in so that they can have scale in order to respond to this crisis. So we are very active. If you need more details on that, I did make an announcement on LinkedIn, and I'll send out a little bit more information on those packages shortly. But we have to realize that if we're going to do anything of this scale, the only way we can do it and maintain stability is through the cloud. So as a result of that, I want to talk about Extreme CloudIQ. And I want to do that for a couple reasons. First of all, the crisis has been obviously brought emphasis to scalable network remote connectivity. But also, I want to emphasize that Extreme CloudIQ is fairly new. It's only 180 days old. And it was born out of the acquisition of Aerohive. And I have met a lot of those folks. I work very closely with them. We had a very close shared vision immediately at the outset, and we started working almost right off the bat in a very active, agile fashion. Our product leader, Nabil Bukhari, made some rather bold statements at that time. And he set a benchmark of 180 days, and that date is coming up. It is April 6th, so write it in your calendars, and you will see a series of announcements coming out that will basically create a rolling thunder that will happen not only on April 6th, but on throughout 2020 and beyond. Now, I don't want to steal any of that thunder today. My intention is more to set up a cloud front for that thunder to occur. Now, as a result to that, what we're going to do is a quick presentation, and then I want to hand you off to a demonstration of the Extreme CloudIQ interface. Now, our agenda's rather simple. Extreme Networks will be the industry's first cloud-driven end-to-end enterprise network, and we are well on our way to accomplishing that goal. But to understand why we made the bold statements 180 days ago and why I'm making these bold statements now is to understand cloud evolution. Because when you do, you understand where we are and how we're positioned. And at that point, I think you could then appreciate the strength of Extreme Networks' position in this space. But before we can go there, we have to understand, why is it important to begin with? Well, the first data point is the number of mobile users. And that's a big number, but also realize that most mobile users have multiple devices. Many people have 3 or 4. Some people I know have more. And all of those devices are in some fashion tethered to the cloud, and they generate a lot of data. 463 exabytes a day, and that's a huge number to get your hands on. Now, to give you a little bit of analogy, that's a far larger number than mankind has created up until modern computing age. And we're generating that per day. And that number is only growing because the number of devices is increasing. Now, many of these devices are the multiple devices that we all have as mobile users, but there's a good percentage of these devices that have no humans whatsoever. And of course, I'm referring to the Internet of Things, smart refrigerators, smart homes, smart buildings. All of these will have systems, and all of them generate data, and that's all adding fuel to the number and the amount of data that we're generating per day. And then finally, when we look at the financial aspect, the spend in 2020 is staggering, and that number is only increasing, and increasing on a rather drastic basis. So what's the drive? Why are people moving in this direction? Well, the actual answer is fairly easy. It's all about agility and optimization. The simplicity of provisioning devices and services into the network and delivering on them, and the overall management of the environment. The speed, the continuous innovation, and the ability to deliver new features. And that's something that Extreme Networks, with our unique architecture, can do very, very innovatively. And I'm actually going to show you a few new features that we've added with our agile development in just the recent past. The other aspect is the service and the value-add partner tech ecosystem that comes inherently when you partner in a cloud type scenario. You are now bigger than yourself, and you can leverage on the expertise and the engines and the data sets of a larger partner. And then finally, to talk about those data sets, we need to make the cloud smart, and that's what we've done. Self-learning, to be using machine learning and artificial intelligence in a very effective fashion. Now, those words get thrown around a lot, and a lot of vendors use them. But I think by the time we're done with this session, you'll see that what we mean is something that is very crystal clear. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is not something to be taken lightly. It is a very long reach to get there, and we'll give you some insights as far as where we've gone, what we've learned, and where we're at. And then finally, the scale. No one else can offer the scale that we can, the unlimited growth, the ability to do multi-tiering and tenancy dynamically and allow our customers to expand and grow. Think of the recent footprint change that has happened just in the recent weeks. And we've been able to accommodate that for our customers and our users. The aspect of security. This is not something to be taken lightly, and we are the only ISO certified security cloud, ISO certified cloud out there for networking. And as a result of the architectural innovations that we've done and the lessons that we've learned, we have the hyperscale expertise. And that is key because we can carry that hyperscale expertise forward and maintain our certification, because it's one thing to achieve it, it's another thing to refresh it and maintain it over time. So what we're going to do is talk about this in the aspects of where we're at. And I want you to kind of look and realize the fact that if you look at the industry as a whole, everybody has a cloud of some type, or at least some type of cloud message, but not all clouds are alike. If we look in nature, and I happen to be an amateur meteorologist, I've been interested in this since I was a young boy. Clouds are different because of the different atmospheric conditions and the circumstances in which they're formed, and that's how it works in nature. But that's not so when we look at cloud networking. It's more a series of technology development. Probably the better analogy here is to use is the space program. We started by launching rockets, getting them to launch successfully and orbit the globe. And then finally, we got to the point where they could re-enter and we could retrieve the capsule. Then in the second generation, we started sending dogs and chimpanzees, and then eventually sent John Glenn. And that was the culmination of the second generation Mercury program. We moved into the third generation, which was Gemini. That focused on giving us the working expertise in space, the ability to kind of get the technology foundation set for the fourth generation, which eventually culminated with Apollo and the long reach that we made with our successful launch to the moon. Now, we have to realize that we just couldn't take the first generation and hop to the fourth. There was a series of architectural changes that had to happen, and NASA at many times had to start from scratch and rebuild and look at things differently. Each time they stepped into different architectural phases. And that's, I think, a lot of things that people don't realize when we talk about the term generation, first versus second, second versus third, third versus fourth. And I just want to kind of give some insight as to what those truly mean. Because if we look at first generation cloud, it's a very simple concept. We're really taking at the base level virtual machines, we're popping them in a data center, and then we're virtualizing the service. It's not globally scalable. It's limited to a single tenant, which means typically it's going to be on premises. Nobody trusts a remote tether, and you don't have proper separation of services. Second generation brings in the introduction of microservices, and that brings in the ability to do the resiliency and the continuous delivery. It also allows the ability for multi-tenancy, the enhancement of security boundaries, and the ability to have now a remote tether to the environment. And now it truly becomes a multi-subscriber service type model because it has the right architectural components. We start to see the advent of data analytics, pulling data out of the cloud for management of the service and the infrastructure. Now, I want to emphasize that given all the metrics we talked about, movement from first to second generation is not easy. And it takes a long hop to get there. A lot of enhancements to the overall architecture. Now, to get to third generation, you really need to do an architecture swap, and that's what we learned. And at this point, we're talking about microservices on serverless computing platforms. And that brings us a cloud that is truly elastic in nature. And we can expand, we can add new features, we can do extremely agile development in a very, very quick fashion. That gives us performance, flexibility, and resiliency. And it gives us the ability and foundation for real-time innovation. Now we can start to really, truly leverage on machine learning and artificial intelligence, because now we're taking the data set and we're actually exercising algorithms to demonstrate and display actionable information to the administrator. That's the big difference here, guys, is having a huge data set is only of value if you're able to work with it, if you're able to take meaning out of it and actually have actionable knowledge that's generated onto it. And that's really the big value that you have to look for when vendors start talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's a lot more than just a lot of data. It is the intelligence of the model and how that data is leveraged, and then just as importantly, how that data can be maneuvered and presented. Now, let's take a view at what we just looked at. Cloud networking today, really between first and second generation. Some vendors are into the second generation space, and a few are struggling to change their architectures to go into the third generation. We are already there. We've been there. That's where we're functioning today. That is the delivery model that you're about to see, and it's the delivery model that is happening during this crisis. But this is really just an evolutionary step for us. We are right on the doorstep of moving to fourth generation. Again, stay tuned for April 6th. And here we start to see the aspects of dynamic licensing, inconsistency in licensing, dynamic capacity management, the ability for dynamic segmentation, containerized microservices that can be leveraged, dynamic resource pooling, 11.9's data reliability or durability, and also the expansion of our data horizon that's usable to the subscribers out to 90 days, which is by far more than anyone else in the industry. And that's a great thing. But we also have to realize that when most vendors talk about their cloud services, they focus pretty much on Wi-Fi and maybe a little bit of light switching to basically support the APs. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about across the board portfolio support. Our wireless environment, our switching environment, our fabric technologies, both campus and data center, and our routing technologies, all brought up into the consumable formats of Extreme Cloud with a common northbound set of services that can be leveraged. Now, I don't want to go on with a presentation any longer. What I'd like to do is switch my screens, and we're going to go right into the Extreme CloudIQ interface. And here we have the global view of the cloud itself. You can see that we have our aggregate daily traffic. That's a big number, and I want to clarify that in a minute. But we can see that we're pulling it in across the globe. And here, if you look, we have a chart or a legend that tells us the color coding of the different locations where we're pulling in our subscribers and users. We range anywhere from the lighter color, which is 1 to 25,000, all the way up to 73,000, all the way up to about 98,000. So we can see that we have some very big hot spots going on, and that makes a lot of sense given the fact that this is causing a big surge in remote teleworking. Now, this number may sound like a big number, and you're saying, wow, you're pulling a lot of data out of the subscribers. Not so. If you look at the number of active clients, we've seen in the day, this is the number of current ones. Look at these numbers. They're large. The number of active sessions, and keep in mind that's million. The management events, you can see that the amount of data that's coming out of our customers is actually extremely small. It's not a lot of information. It's the aggregate that matters, folks. It's the aggregate that matters because that gives us the overall view and the data set in order to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning. And here are just some high-level global insights that we have across the globe within our cloud, our OS distributions, who's connected by wired, who's connecting with 2, 4, 5, so forth, so on. But let's get a little bit more specific here. Let's get into our specific network site, and we're going to do that by going to what's called the Network 360 Monitor. Now, the Network 360 Monitor takes us to an overall view. You can see that we are a school system in this scenario. Now, this isn't an actual school system. This is set up in our CTC labs, and you can see that that's located in our Salem facility. Now, at the northbound side of the screen, you can see that we have a series of report cards. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, we have our local site. You can see that we can kind of divide it up into the various locations within the school district. Now, before we go here, what I want to do is I'm going to go up and go to the network report card and click on that. And now we have a report card of our network, higher level overview of usage and network health. We can see that we're looking pretty good. Report card gives me 100%. I have my internet availability score. Everything's looking good there. I have an idea of my distribution of traffic across, and also the interface models that are happening within the network. I am now going to switch. Now, it's important to realize that we can pop out of this and we can go back into the global view, but we can also maneuver between the different report cards right at this top pull-down menu, which I happen to like. I think it's really nimble. I'm going to go to the Wi-Fi health. And again, we can see that everything's looking good. Our SNR is looking good. Channel utilization is looking good. Association per radio score. These are all important metrics that we need to see. But we can also get a window into some details as well. For instance, we're looking at transmit and receive retries. There's nothing abnormal here that we need to investigate, but that is something that you'd want to be looking at if there were, for instance, performance issues, things of that nature, and you perhaps had insight that you might have to retune the environment. Let's go in and take a look at services health. And this will give us the ability to go in and look at our supporting services, DHCP, DNS, and NTP, and our scoring there is good as well. And then finally, we're going to go to our applications health. And that will take us in to show our application usage, give us an idea of our top applications in use. We can go in and, for instance, click on Google, and we can get a view of the actual data usage, the number of unique clients that are using it, clicking a little bit of usage timeline, client distribution from an OS type, and then finally down below we can get a view of the different devices that are in the network using that service. And as we can see, we have Mike's Chromebook. Let's go click on that. And now we can see we have Mike's Chromebook up. We see what VLAN they're in. We see the user associated with them, MLAM. We also see that user in that device is associated as a Madison High School. And indeed, yes, he is located that device is located in the high school. So we can see exactly where in the blueprint model. We also see the radio type and the channel. Good information. We can go down below and actually get some idea on the performance of his device. We can get some idea of where he is, and we can see that he's been pretty much from a historical perspective associated with AP2. and a little bit background usage, things of that nature, maximum client capabilities, all good information for us. What we're going to do is we're going to back out of that view, and the next thing I want to do is go down and show a network scorecard. Now, this is a nice feature. What it does is it takes the historical performance of your network over a period of time, and then it basically does a current score. So we're running against the 30-day average. Keep in mind that we're going to be increasing that, but now we can see that our current score gives us basically a scoring for all our locations, and we're looking pretty good. We're looking pretty consistent. There's really nothing going on that we need to evaluate. Now, if I want to look at the comparative analytics against the whole cloud, I can do that here. And you can see that we do have some work that we have to do with the number of clients in poor health. But I do want to emphasize that's kind of an artificial number here because we had a large number of disconnects and things of that nature. But I can get back and actually show a historical value for that, and you can actually see the historical change that happened, as of the pretty much the 3rd of March, which really was where things started really going. So it's kind of nice that we can actually see that trend reflected right in the health report. So ML Insights, very, very good. Last thing I want to do is Client 360. Client 360 allows us to look at the overall client population, and we can go down and click on any of these clients and get a screen that's very similar to what we saw before. As a matter of fact, it's the exact thing. And we have an idea of which AP they're connected with. I can go down and actually see where they're located in the facility, and quite a bit of information that I can get through these different interfaces. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go into the management of the devices. But before I do that, I want to go into the Network 360 monitor one more time, because I referenced this left-hand side of the screen before. What I'd like to do is click on one of these sites. So we're going to click on the high school classrooms. And now we can see that we have a layout of our access points across the environment. We have AP1, AP3, AP2, and KJON 1. We're looking at connected clients. So if I go in and I click on a AP, I can see the actual connected clients, Tyler's Surface, Janet's Surface. I can go over and look at Mike's Chromebook, and we can see that Mike's Chromebook is the one we were just looking at, is off of HSAP1. And again, I can click on Mike's Chromebook and bring up Mike's Chromebook information again. So this cross-correlates very nicely across the environment, and again, validating the location and the fact that they are indeed attached to AP1. I can also look at the Bluetooth devices, and from there I can click on and I can get an idea of the Bluetooth devices that are present in the environment. And this gives me some sort of management insight into this environment. Typically, you don't have a lot of visibility into what's going on in the Bluetooth space, so you'll see advancements in that in the future as well. We're going to now go back to the connected clients. And before we leave, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go into a view of the overall topology. So we'll go to a topology view, and this is actually one of the agile developments that we did. So let's take a look at this view, and we can see that AP2, AP1, AP3 are basically all homed back to XOS 5 from a switch perspective. If we click on XOS 5, we can see that we can actually bring up alerts and things of that nature. So we can see that we've had a disconnect, and actually that's pretty popular here, as you're probably guessing from the comparative health screen. A lot of people disconnected. There actually is no one within the CTC. You can see that we have some actions that we can do against the device here as well. So it's not just simply displaying the switch. It's actually saying, okay, I can actually go in, I can reboot that switch, I can SSH into that switch and actually get access to that device. and we'll show you another view of the exhaust switch in just a couple minutes to kind of validate the fact that we're moving towards a full configuration and management setup. So this is a very good view. This is a new enhancement that we brought to the table. Look for further development in this area as we move forward. We'll go back to our map now, and the next thing I would like to do is now go over to our devices. And here we're going to go over and look at the overall devices that we have within our site inventory. And right at the top of the screen, you can see that we list a series of exhaust switches. This is another agile development that we've done in these past 180 days, the ability to actually have our switches, our wireline switches, plugged in and monitorable through Extreme CloudIQ. And keep in mind that we're moving towards full configuration and management, and stay tuned for the April 6th announcement. If you recall, we actually had looked at those APs, and we saw that they were pretty much all homed into Exhaust 5. So let's click on Exhaust 5. Let's bring that up. And we can see that we have an overall view of the switch, the active ports, a profile of the device, its MAC address, its IP address, so forth, so on. The ability to get some sort of idea of port utilization. And again, we can go back all the way from 1 hour to 24 hours without a problem. We have a look at our active alarms, the unique clients, an overview of the CPU and memory usage. We can get in and actually get a view of the clients that are associated, and we can see that AP1 is indeed plugged in. If we look down the list, we're not going to do that, but we'd see AP2 and AP3 as well. Diagnostics, the ability to look at the information on the port level, a little bit more granular. And then finally, we can go in and we can look at events. And we can see that we have no events out of the environment, although we do have one active alarm. And that active alarm was actually a MAC disconnect, as we will recall when we looked at that earlier. So that shows us a view of the switch. Now keep in mind that this monitor only. Very shortly, we will be going in and having full configuration capabilities. And in order to get an insight to that, let's bring up the AP, HSAP2, which we also looked at earlier. And again, we're showing its location in the environment. And we show that we have 2 unique clients associated with it. But here we can see that we have a configure tab as well. I'm not going to go into that, but we have the system interface and the wireless interfaces, the clients associated with the device, and we can see that Yuri's iPad is connected and it's healthy. And we also have a series of events. And as you can see, there has been a lot of disconnects off of the network from most of the users in the domain, given to the fact that most people are remote. The other point, though, that I want to bring up is you may see this policy piece here. When we onboard devices, and this is an important thing to realize, we can onboard devices and we could actually assign policies at the time. So we can go in, we can enter in our serial number or import them through a CSV facility. And then from there, we can go in and assign those to actual policies and actually deploy them in a very, very easy dynamic fashion. We want to take a look at the policies. We can go in and look in the fact that we have different template profiles that we've created. Here we have Madison High School, we have the Madison Guest, the elementary school and the middle school. Now when I deploy devices, I can just set the template, onboard them, deploy them into the network, and then go back in and manage the devices appropriately through the device screen. So that's a great thing. It allows a very good granular amount of manageability, and as you can see, we can track them down the actual clients and users in various fashions across the network. But before we leave here, I did want to highlight that we do have some rogues up here in the corner in security. I want to kind of click on that and take a look at what it demonstrates. And it's basically saying, okay, we have some rogue APSSIDs, and we can get an idea of roughly where they're located by just clicking on the reporting device. And we can see that that reporting device happens to be an AP150W, and it's located in the back office area of the gym. So now it allows me the ability to have some geographic scope of where those rogues are located. All right. So with that, all of this I want to emphasize is coming from the cloud. This is not a local management app. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch my context. I'm going to leave the school district, and we're going to go into my remote teleworking environment. This is pretty much what you'd have if you had the remote teleworking kit. So I'm going to bring up my portal, and this is into my my home residence environment. And as I said, I've been a remote teleworker for quite some time. I only recently am an Extreme CloudIQ user, and I have to say, I love it. I absolutely love it. Here we have our devices, and I'm just going to go really quickly through. We can get to our cloud view, just like before. We can get into our ML Insights, our network monitor, idea where I'm located, network scorecard. We can go through all of the information that we talked about with the larger site. I lose no granularity of information. And I also can go in and do some comparisons of myself with the network scorecard so that I can compare myself as far as how my network and my home residence has been performing against the 30-day average. And I want to emphasize that we're expanding that out as well. And then I can go in and I can do some comparative analytics to say, okay, my particular network infrastructure, how am I doing? And you could see that we have an average number of clients in poor health. And I'm going to go in now and go into my client 360. And I have much less clients, but you can see that I have a series of devices out here. And I actually can go in and I can look at, for instance, this one user happens to be a MacBook. And I can go in and get an idea of which AP that user is associated with. And that happens to be in my house. And I can get some idea that user has been in my house consistently. And this happens to be my son's PC. Let's take a look at the, let's see, probably a better example is the Galaxy S10. Galaxy S10, this is my device. And you can see that currently I am in the barn. I'm associated with the AP in my office, and that's EC80. And you can also see that my subnet is different. So I'm in the 192.168.1. My son was in 192.168.0. So you can see we have a routing entity between us. And you can also get some idea of my track record with my device. I have been in the office, but I've also been in the house, and then I've been in the office, and then I've been in the house. So you can actually get a basically a client trail as far as where I've been within my network infrastructure. And probably the S10 is a good example because that's always in my pocket. So that just dynamically attaches me when I move, whereas my laptops don't move too much. Okay, so that kind of shows that we have all the tools and insight at our local level as well. I want to thank you for the time. So rather the very large infrastructures, like a whole school district, all the way down to my tiny little remote premises with 2 little APs, we can provide scale. And we provide the same granularity of information. The same tool sets can be leveraged. So whether you're a remote teleworker or whether you're a full-scale school district or even in the future a full-scale enterprise, we will be able to provide you the same sets of tools, the same set and leverage of true machine learning and artificial intelligence, and the true scalable architecture of a 4th generation cloud. Thank you very much for your time. I hope everyone remains healthy and above all, safe. And again, stay active, stay productive.